I'm a founder and COO at Advertise Global, a next-gen creative tech agency creating UI for modern AI applications. Exciting time to be in our industry. As you said, we're working at that intersection of AI, immersive environments like the metaverse, and succeeding in bringing in human craftsmanship and creative ability. Still making sure that we're leaning on that and not just putting everything in a prompt generator and seeing what spits out, right? We know how to use the tools, but we also have the best in the world on those tools, making sure that what we create is going to be world class.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Ways to Wealth. Today we are joined by Riley. Riley, why don't you give us the TLDR on who you are and what you're about?
Thanks, Charlie. I'm Riley. I'm a founder and COO at Advertise Global, a next-gen creative tech agency creating UI for modern AI applications.
That's really succinct. That's really cool because I looked online and I was doing research for this episode, and obviously there's lots of paths and lots of in-depth kind of rabbit holes you can go down when you're in this space, especially as it's on the kind of edge of both AI and the metaverse and Web3.
Yeah.
In essence, obviously, it sounds like you also are very focused on partnering with the brands, and those brands might be traditional businesses as well. But yeah, that was a succinct description of what you do.
I've had a lot of practice trying to get it down clearly, right? Because as you said, Charlie, it's at the forefront of a very fluid, constantly evolving industry. And for the people who are living and breathing, AI and the metaverse and tech at the moment, they can kind of pick up what we're talking about. But, telling my grandma what I do, that's where I've really in some practice, really locking it down. Because it's an exciting time to be in our industry. As you said, we're working at that intersection of AI, immersive environments like the metaverse, and succeeding in bringing in, human craftsmanship and creative ability, still making sure that we're leaning on that and not just putting everything in a prompt generator and seeing what spits out, right? That's our point of difference is we know how to use the tools, but we also have the best in the world on those tools, making sure that what we create is going to be world class.
Interesting. Yeah, cool. But an agency model, which means that you're able to potentially get to revenue faster.
We fair bit of this will probably become public over next year, but we're already revenue generating. When we're in our second financial year, and have so far 10 times our revenue compared to the last financial year. It's definitely been one roller coaster of a journey. We've done our time and the blood, sweat, and tears on this, whereas now that it's becoming quite successful and the appetite is there. We just did our Christmas party on Friday, and it was quite a cool moment for the founding team to step back, take stock, and go, wow, we're actually here where this time last year there was no Christmas party, there was no work, wasn't able to, shout people anything. We're all juggling other jobs and multiple different things. But this has been an awesome year for us. A key driver of that being people actually understand what we're talking about now when we say AI companions and digital humans, and there's enough, that's entered the cultural zeitgeist and people know what it is, whereas the previous year, that was our uphill battle, was constantly trying to get people to understand what we were talking about being the future of software and the way that we interact with technology.
Yeah, cool. So how do you I guess we'll go there shortly around kind of some of the nuts and bolts around how you go about approaching and finding great partners to work with. But I guess if we take a step back first of seemingly you've definitely had a pivot in your career from kind of starting also in hospitality and moving and finding your way now today in kind of tech, and AI and that metaverse piece. Um, what was the kind of what were the catalysts? Did you always know you were gonna be an entrepreneur? Were there other activities you did that prepared you for that pivot? What was the kind of, yeah, arc?
It's a great question. I think I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit, as the classic teenager going around to the neighbors, knocking on the door, can I mow your lawns, yada, yada, you need help babysitting. Um, and then my hospo career kind of started because I went to university a little bit too early to know what I wanted to really do. And as a result of that, I just wasn't putting myself into my studies, and I was just more interested in, the social parts of university. But so yeah, my hospo career lasted 5 to 6 years or so, from the bottom to, a department manager to 2IC of the business to a general manager. I went the whole way up. And this is something that I always say to people who ask me, like, I don't know what I should do. I'm just coming out of high school, because I mentor a few people on a volunteer basis. I've done for Big Brothers Big Sisters and also the local high school near me. And constantly, kids hear my story and go, well, I don't know what I want to do. And to them I say, look, hospo is a young person's job. When you're young is the time to get into it. And the soft skills that it's going to teach you are going to be invaluable for the rest of your career. Like your interpersonal, your communication, your conflict resolution. Nothing in a meeting is as emotional or, I guess, aggressive as, a really drunk person being cut off from the bar. If you can deal with them, you can probably deal with a disgruntled stakeholder.
Right.
And also for the leadership opportunities that it gives you, right? Like I was 24, 25, managing a team of 20 plus, from people who are younger than me to, in some instances, 2 decades older than me. And there's not too many roles or industries that you can go into where you can have that kind of opportunity. But the catalyst for changing was, I just basically, I'm not old, I'm only 32, but in my mid-20s decided I'm too old for this stuff anymore. I was had moved to Auckland to open a bar for Good George on their first, which was the brewery beer company that I was working for in Hamilton. The Mission Bay bar, I was the first bar manager for there and got it set up off the ground, but I was doing 90-hour weeks on a salary, and a hospo salary, which isn't really enough to justify working 90 hours a week, right? And I did that for a couple of months and realized, I wanted to be working when my friends were working, and I wanted to have the time off when they had the time off instead of constantly working weekends and nights. And it was a very fortuitous time for me to get out. I dabbled in a few things, but ultimately decided I was going to go back to university and finish my bachelor's. And it ended up being the timing was perfect, because I went back to university. The start of 2020 was my first semester back, and obviously COVID hit. The hospitality industry completely, really suffered from that event, and a lot of people, I know people that got made redundant, businesses that shut, and I was very thankful to have made that career pivot just in time, that while every lockdown was on, I was able to study remotely and actually be progressing, whereas I knew a lot of people were kind of just in a limbo where their job wasn't able to open, and they basically had a wasted year. Where I was grinding full out, and that's another piece of advice I pass on. If you don't know what to do, going back to uni as a mature student is such an advantage. Like, recognizing the value of your education that you're getting and the money and the loan that you're actually taking, and going, okay, I'm going to make the most of this. And also just your general life experience. You understand how different industries and work together and have a more holistic understanding of the world instead of, coming straight out of high school and expected to specialize in some kind of field. Some people do know what they want to do, right? And I'm envious of those people. I certainly wasn't one myself. I needed a little bit more time before figuring out what I wanted to do. And I mean, I studied strategic management and public relations at university as my majors because I still wanted to go into entrepreneurship and got a great internship.
Yeah, that's cool. So you kind of knew you were going to get into to entrepreneurship. So you basically chose your majors consciously around the idea that you would be building a brand for yourself and building a business and having that kind of entrepreneurship
Yeah,
lens.
that was always the intent. I'd seen remote working becoming more and more of a thing, and the lady that I did my internship, an amazing PR practitioner by Danny Simpson, she was, running her own agency, PR agency. And she gave me a great internship where I got to interview the winners from the Waikato Business Awards 2 years running and do profiles on them. And that was a great opportunity to talk to a variety of different people who were being successful in, either business leadership or starting their own business. It really, got me thinking about, okay, I was doing my own freelance agency thing, but the question of scale was always a little bit difficult with that, right? And to be honest, I wanted to get into something that was going to light a fire under my belly. And this all kind of coincided. So I'd finished my degree. Finished in 2 years, summer school, 5 papers a semester, really gunning for it, recognizing, as I said, I was working 90 hours a week in hospo and you're supposed to study 40 hours a week. I was like, this is easy compared to what I was doing before. Like, I'm happy to do 50 hours of study a week. But so I had this nice little freelance agency business going that was kind of like jack of all trades, digital marketing for SMEs. And then around 2023, I started to see all this stuff about NFTs and Web3 and then Metaverse started getting brought up. And I was like, wow, I'm a sci-fi nerd. This is the stuff that I loved reading as a kid. And some people are actually building this. And I really wanted to get into that industry. So that required a little bit of a financial hit to go from, managing your own business to I joined a startup company called Non-Fungible Labs as their copywriter.
Okay.
And they were a company who'd made it big on the NFT craze and were looking to scale and start building their own infrastructure. I worked for them for a year, which was a wild year. Everybody was drinking the Kool-Aid, war rooms on release, really in the trenches startup environment, which was amazing because I'd had the experience, working in an established business, leading a team, and then starting my own business and getting that to go to the point where it was supporting me.
Yeah.
But startup as a team was a new experience. And I loved it. But like every Cinderella story, there's a little bit of a gotcha at the end. And for us, it was the form of a restructure where 8 kind of sister companies in the ecosystem who all worked quite well together had been got rolled up into one, and we knew that was coming, but we'd also been told that we'd all be coming along on the ride, right?
Yep.
Wolf of Wall Street, cocktail party, when he's going I'm not, and I don't know if I can speak in Julian, but I'm not fucking leaving. Okay. It's like that, but the CEO going, we're going to make it to the moon. And everybody's like, yeah. Month later, there's a restructure. 80% of the team across all the businesses is going to be let go.
This was within 3 months of the acquisition taking place? or the rough?
It wasn't a. It was a roll up. It was a roll.
I'm familiar with
They
roll-up.
had a successful race. Yeah. The roll up happened. It was at a really tough time for me personally, where my dad was sick with stage 4 lung cancer. I was just about to get married, and this restructure starts. And to be honest, I didn't really fight to stay that much because I was quite distracted with this other stuff in my life going on, and the idea of a couple months gardening leave to focus on looking after my dad at that time. I was like, all right, it's not too bad. And then, like, fate is a funny thing, and the way that the universe works out. Got made redundant, and then a couple months later got hit up by a colleague that I used to work for about did I want to get together and start talking about what our own business could look like. And so that was July 2023 that the founding team of Advertise Global first got together, and we started, thinking about. There were 6 of us originally. It's down to 5 now. And we kind of thought about, what can we build? We've just been in the situation where you pour your heart and soul into a company, right? And you're drinking the Kool-Aid, as I said, and you think you're a part of something special and amazing, and then you quickly find out that no, that there's only a few people who are actually going on that ride the whole way. And we want to think, okay, how do we get ourselves in the position where we're the ones building something, we control our destiny, and we're still operating in this industry that we love. And so we had some really wicked creative talent on our team. Our CCO, Paul Young, he's worked with Disney on Marvel, Star Wars. He's worked with Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon, Capcom. The list goes on and on. He's an incredible principal artist and the head of our creative vision. And we started talking about the issue that we'd always found in the Web3 NFT world is like, what did they actually do, right? You sell this, we're making these NFTs, and some of them were animated, the ones we made, and you sold them, but for the user, like, yeah, they look nice and you get a bit of a dopamine rush from seeing them the first time, but then, like, what's the actual utility, right? What's the actual value? And so we're playing around with AI tools, and we realized, something that we could start building right now is animated AI-powered avatars that, like, can respond and be used in a variety of different use cases. And you already see it in science fiction, right? Like an example that I always use to people is like we're building the first stage of Cortana from Halo, the hologram lady that pops up and talks to you. And that's what we're doing. And as AI continues to progress, I think, the avatars that we're going to be building are going to become larger than life. And I'm really interested to see where this industry goes.
So you've started up with 5 founders now. There was 6. It's a classic story as well, similar to, because there's all these, when starting a business, especially in this modern day and age where it's been, it's been, entrepreneurship is the thing, it's the current thing. Tech is the current thing. And it's always the current thing until it's no longer the current thing, and it's then just established. It's like AI is AI until people take it for granted. I mean, take a look at Google search. It's like preeminent AI. It's, but it's no longer AI, it's search. And I think kind of the same thing applies here almost, where, we have all this tech, we are engaging with all this AI, and then one day, maybe in the next 5 years, it will no longer be called AI. It will just be called, here's my companion, right? Whatever it is.
Yeah.
But, 5 co-founders, there's 5 voices. How have you guys managed the startup phase of a relatively large founding team, and obviously working on the ways of working within that. Did you all come from the roll up, like different parts of it, or?
Yeah, we're all part of the ecosystem that got rolled up, and not all for the same company. Um, but we all knew each other, some closely, more closely than others, when we started. But we are in a unique situation with a 5-person founding team. Is definitely not traditional you see in these startups. But honestly, it has taken a village to grow Advertise Global to this point, and each of our founders is a weapon who brings their own like incredible specialized skill set. And I think that's what's been able to enable us to grow, which now looking back is quite quickly.
Yeah.
Like revenue, 7-figure revenue positive is an incredible achievement for our second proper year. But like the first 18 months were there was nothing. It took after the first 18 months, I was 5-6 grand of my own money invested into the company, let alone the time factor, right, that I'd put into, which was about 20 hours a week, every week, on top of a 40-hour full-time job to support my.
And was that the kind of strategy your team used? Is you were basically going to get an income, and then you guys were going to bootstrap it in your off time to get that momentum going? How did that work?
Yeah, that was the predominant strategy. We had some artists that were working closer to full-time hours on the company, that the little revenue we were making was going towards paying their rent and keeping them fed on ramen noodles, nothing fancy, but making sure that they could put food on on the table for their families to survive. But we've all gone through a lot of hardship and sacrifice to get where we are now, which has given me a fresh perspective on like just how difficult it is to grow a business that can support. I mean, now all 5 founders work full-time. We have a team of another 8 to 10 full-time employees, and then roughly 30 contractors.
Oh, gee, that's huge already. All of a sudden.
Probably.
Oof.
Yeah, that's the level of growth we've been dealing with this year, which has been a really fun challenge to get into, because I joined the company as the copywriter, and my background was more in marketing. So when we were, talking about roles for the company, I was always kind of pegged in the CMO role.
Yeah.
But I had an honest conversation with the rest of my founders that my heart wasn't really in marketing, and, it wasn't what I wanted to do. And what I'd always really enjoyed was the other major that I did, the strategic management, the strategy, the growing teams from my time in hospitality. That's something it really taught me about myself, is that I love growing a high performing, functioning team, and finding the right people and putting them in the right role and making sure that they're empowered to do some kick-ass stuff. And that was a major need for the business, was that we needed somebody to be, for want of another word, like herding the cats in the right way, like making sure everybody is aligned. We're a remote team, so there's no general office that everybody comes into. Our founders, 3 in New Zealand, 1 on either side of either coast in the States. So we're split up around the world and never really get to meet in person. And so, I signaled that I wanted to change my role, and it's been really beneficial, not just for myself, but for the company. That role change happened at the start of the year. And I mean, that New Zealand, we've got the tall poppy syndrome, but, I'm comfortable enough saying that me moving into the COO role has been vital for the growth that we've had this year, because our team of creatives and engineers are amazing at what they do, but someone needs to be in the back end making sure the foundations of the company are solid, and that what we're actually trying to do is grounded in reality and is actually going to be achievable, right? And we actually have the money to do what we're going to do, and not letting shiny object syndrome distract us from the main thing, which in startups and founder life is, especially in tech, there's always something new that you think, oh, maybe we get into that, maybe we do that. And in my experience, keeping a narrow focus gives you greater market penetration, right? If you're trying to do one thing really, really well, you're going to be more successful than trying to do everything half-hearted.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
yeah.
Yeah, really interesting. So how long did it take you to actually get your first paying client? And what percentage of your clients are actually in New Zealand versus global?
Um, in our first year, we had a couple little clients, that came in, the ones that, were able to keep the artists working full time. Um, Currently, we have just one client in New Zealand, a very well-known company that everybody in the country knows, but that is all I can say without their team coming at me. And that's in its early stages, looking to ramp up next year, which will be really cool. But we've delivered a proof of concept to them. They've liked it, and we're going to, in the new year, look at the strategy for growing that relationship. But the rest of our clients are overseas based. We predominantly work with companies in the UAE and USA.
That's because that's where the two crypto hype
And they
are.
found us.
Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. And well, not just crypto hubs, right? The UAE is very bullish on creating the Silicon Valley of the Middle East. And that's where you're seeing a lot of, I mean, the LinkedIn founders are all flocking to Dubai at the moment, for a reason, right? There's a lot of opportunity there. There's a lot of events and conferences happening there at the moment. We've got to consider how involved are we in the region? Do we open an office? Is a discussion that we constantly have. But we've been very fortuitous with the clients that we have had. We're enterprise level, Charlie, so it's not like there's not there's not a dozen clients. I think right now we have 5 on the books, unless I'm forgetting one, which I actually did with our New Zealand-based clients. Our first proper gig, the one that really helped us scale up and get everybody on board full time, was for a New Zealand company called Osako Group. They are in the training industry and like professional training. And so we developed an avatar for them for the Echo Mind project, which is an avatar that is incredible. Like, what we pride ourselves on is cinema quality, high definition, like as realistic as technology can push the avatars. We do say to people, do you want something more fantastical and a little bit more less grounded in reality? People aren't really biting on that yet, but we'd love to do something that was a little bit more creative and adventurous. Right now, everybody wants, how close to real can you get it? So we created an awesome avatar for them called Ethan that has like multiple different personas depending on the scenario that you want him to be in. So that the use case, the problem that it's solving is apparently it takes like 30 interviews for someone in law, or say a police officer, to get good at actually interviewing suspects, right? Because the only practice they get is during college, where it's an instructor that they know, like it's a very sanitized, non-realistic environment to practice in. So there's an industry stat that once they become officers, it then takes a further 20 to 30 interviews before they actually really start to master that skill. Whereas what you can do bringing an avatar on, they don't know anything about the avatar, right? They don't know what persona we've given it, and they really have to, and we've rigged it up to the point where, it can do classic body language signs of lying, like looking to the top left and all that stuff, for the practice person, the person using the avatar to train, to pick up on. And we're seeing incredible success with that, and Asaka Group are doing really well, and that was an awesome project that we've finished and delivered, and are busy on other things at the moment, but it was really pivotal for Advertise Global to get our feet under us and a decent amount of expertise and knowledge and revenue that we could actually, let's start growing. And it's just been a roller coaster from there.
Awesome. Well, I guess now, like, looking forward a little bit, what do you think, like, success looks like for you guys in the next 5 years? Like, have you guys thought about, like, this and discussed it amongst the founding team? Like, what is the kind of North Star that you guys are following?
Our North Star is, we have been having a lot of discussions about this recently, because the last 12 months have been so fluid that the original business plan we had isn't worth the paper that you could print it out on, right? Everything's changed so drastically.
Right.
So we've had to be having a little bit more North Star discussions. What we don't want to be a service-based agency forever. There is a core piece of technology that powers a lot of what we do, and there's only a very few companies in the world that do that. So it's something that we're looking at building ourselves, to have the infrastructure to power our avatars. It's the highest cost in delivering real-time responsive video avatars. So we're building the technology and the infrastructure behind that, so we can eventually pivot our existing customers from the software that we're using now onto our own proprietary platform. And we've got a nice competitive advantage there, in that we have some of the best people in the world at making the avatars that run on that software, that we can see where the parts where you can get some economies of scale and make it a little bit more efficient and cost productive are. So that's really exciting. We've got the roadmap, the hiring plan and everything for that. And it is a big investment. It's not something that we can, divert revenue from right now to fund that. So we are actively looking for investors to fund that. And we've got some two very different positive pathways to getting the funding to that, which is exciting to wrap up the year with that bit of excitement and kicking off next year, actually building it.
Yeah, cool.
So success in 5 years' time. We've released our infrastructure platform. The founders, I think most of the founders would say success is the founding team is no longer working 60, 70-hour weeks.
Right.
Would be.
That's a good that'd be a great milestone in 5 years.
That would be a great milestone. Not that every week is that busy, but you still have, most weeks I still have, a few 11, 12-hour days on the tools. But I'm no stranger to working a lot. For me, it's actually, I was working at least 60 hours, when I still had to work full time to support myself in the business. So for me, anything under 60 these days, I'm like, awesome.
Yeah, okay.
Quiet week.
Yeah, and is that a different capital structure than the agency business? You would like spin up a new company and have a cap structure to that, or would it be owned by the service company, do you think? Is that something you guys have thought about around structure?
The service company would become its own. We'd restructure the service branch of Advertise Global off into its own business, and Advertise Global as it stands today, the current cap table would be the ones owning that infrastructure.
Okay, so that would own the IP, and then the service business would become a different entity that didn't own any IP, basically.
Yeah, yeah. We have we've been, and I'll pat ourselves on the back for being pretty clever with the way that we approach the clients that we're working with and the deals that we strike up with them, where we have an equity stake in the projects that we're building, right? So we kind of get to win in both ways, where we build this project and then we're going to build the infrastructure. And having that equity stake means that we can ensure that we're going to be able to transition the users on our projects from the existing software that we have to use to our own proprietary platform.
Okay, so you're also
That's too.
yeah, so you're also reducing your dependency on other providers, and you'll be running your own app essentially.
Yeah.
Okay, and how long until you think you'll deliver that?
Depends on who you ask in the company. Optimistic projections look at end of Q2 this year, and that's quite likely.
Right.
Depending on us ramping up and being able to start building it right now, or right now, early Q1 next year, which all signs are saying yes to that. It should be in the end of Q2. We have a beta that we'll be able to roll off, and being able to transition existing user bases from projects is really going to help us with the economies of scale with some of this technology, right? Where like there are fixed costs, and if you have 100 users or 10,000 users, it doesn't matter. Some of the costs
Stay the same.
stay the same.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And so by being able to pull on a large user base straight away, we manage to skip the tricky period where we might be operating the infrastructure at a loss.
Yeah.
So it's looking like a really awesome year. We got some cool clients coming up. We've got, as I said at the start, Charlie, it's just been a bloody whirlwind of 2025, and 2026 is looking to be a year of even more rapid growth. My focus for the last 2 months in the company has been finding the right people and putting the right systems in place so that we can grow at scale quickly and flexibly.
And what would you say your guys' biggest?
For exciting.
Yeah, what would you say your guys' biggest challenges at the moment?
Biggest challenge at the moment, saying no to things is something that we constantly struggle, because sometimes you just have to keep the main thing, right? And as I mentioned before, shiny object syndrome is very prevalent in this industry, especially when every week, there's new tools and new companies coming on the scene. And keeping up with that is certainly a big challenge. But also like making sure that we time our entry into the market right. Some of our projects, we could be first to market, but we're also not naive enough to pretend like Google or Apple are probably not working on something similar, right? So, and I think that is what we're seeing in the industry at large, right? It's what are the businesses that are able to actually deliver enough value that they can grow and establish themselves before Google comes in and just creates, what you've already created and blows everybody else out of the water.
Yeah, I mean, that is the world we live in a very fast pace where technology is moving very quickly, and deployment of new technology is getting inevitably faster. I mean, I think that's a double-edged sword. I think there are some negatives and that are associated with the new tools, the new capability around productivity, for sure. But like you say, like these hyperscalers, over 50% of the code they're writing is being written by AI. They have the most compute. They get to run the compute at source. They do have these inherent kind of advantages that we're seeing, that perhaps didn't really exist in the same way since maybe the automotive industry basically build out, or perhaps railway before that, just because it's so CapEx heavy. Um, that's really cool though, just to get your take on that. How about the metaverse? So what do you think the most misunderstood thing about the metaverse industry is for the average individual out there?
Hmm. That's a really good question. I think the most misunderstood thing about the metaverse is that, like, that it's, I guess, a choice as to whether we interact with it or not. Like right now, it's certainly a choice, but in 10 years' time, it's going to be at the point, and this is some of the tech age businesses that we're working at before, the one that had the roll up, they were very big on like, how do we make these Web3, these components of Web3, like blockchain and wallets and stuff, how do we make that invisible for the average person?
Mm,
And there's been a lot of work done by really talented people on making it so, setting up a wallet is as easy as signing in with Google
mm.
now, which you see everywhere these days, right? Sign in with Google, Microsoft, or Facebook. Um, and as, like technology keeps increasing and we're able to reach some of those economy of scales, I think it's going to be unavoidable, right? It is going to be active in our life in some way or another. That is actually such a good question, Charlie. That is one I would have preferred to think before.
Thinking, I was thinking that when I asked it, but I guess the lens to give you a little bit of a more of a string to pull on, because it's quite broad, right? Um, but I think
Yeah.
that there's a lot of focus around metaverse that's attached to the NFT bubble, and a lot of investment by Facebook that very rapidly kind of disintegrated. So I think that people have a very narrow view of the metaverse, and it's very much attached to NFTs. So I think that there's obviously applications around education now that are becoming more obvious that were not so obvious pre-LLMs. So
Yeah.
I guess, yeah, that was kind of where I was going, is that, like we all think of NFTs, and NFTs are very synonymous with the metaverse and Web3. Yet, with LLMs especially, it's creating an organic experience with kind of fictional beings, perhaps. And maybe there are use cases and elements that aren't obvious.
Yeah. 100%. I think, we're all going to be figuring that out together. I certainly think the metaverse has some major issues to get over before it is, the average consumer is interacting with it daily. And I guess the major thing, right, is like, is it a completely VR environment that you're going into? Which in that case, you need all the gear, right? And that's such a high barrier to entry. Um, and you see how some people still struggle to like navigate through their phone UI these days, right? I certainly can't imagine any of my grandparents logging into the metaverse. But I think it just got a really bad rap at the start, that point about it being associated with NFTs. And I said earlier, I always wondered, like, what is the value, the utility of this? Like, what can the actual user actually get out of this, instead of being a speculative asset, which so many of them turned into.
Mm.
Um, it's going to be fascinating to see where the industry takes it. I think AI has kind of sucked a lot of the wind out of the metaverse kind of sales at the moment. It's certainly not something that I hear
No.
being brought up that often anymore these days, where 2 years ago it's what everybody was talking about. Like now it has progressed into specialized LLMs, I think, is what everybody's trying to figure out. How do you create? Because you can't compete with Gemini or ChatGPT like that, right? But
Yeah.
where you can beat them is having a very specialized LLM with a very specialized, in-depth knowledge bank, that's been vetted by human experts in their field, have contributed to it, and creating that point of difference where it's like, okay, as I mentioned earlier, a narrow focus for the LLM, not, chat has a general knowledge about everything. But the people who are creating specialized LLM for like healthcare, education, even entertainment, I think that is where those are the people who are going to be the winners of this kind of arms race that we've got at the moment, where there's so many AI startups popping up, which are people vibe, and it's just a couple dudes vibe coding things and trying to set them up. But I think, fast forward 5 to 10 years, we might see a more holistic viewpoint of all this technology where the metaverse is a thing and you can go in and there are AI agents in there who, call them NPCs or something. I think gaming is probably going to be one of the areas we're going to see it come through at first, and maybe not an NFT, but a digital asset that you have ownership of it as your key into those metaverse environments. It's really interesting, but as we,
Still early
theme
days.
of this,
Still early days.
it's still early days, and people have jumped off the metaverse bandwagon because now they're going, oh, it's AI that I've got to.
That's right.
That's where I've got to be. We actually have on our team a real weapon from Meta who'd worked as a project manager on those VR kind of experiences that they were pushing, and his insights into it are quite interesting. I won't go into it too much.
Yeah.
But what makes me confident about our potential and our competitive advantage is these big companies, right, are so, yes, they have access to all the data and all the money, but they're not able to move agilely, right? It takes them some time to pivot and get up to speed. And once they are, they've got so much momentum behind them. But for companies, and this is where AI is leveling the playing field, right, is if you're able to move really quick and make decisions really quickly, you can get enough of a head start over these companies before they've gone through the internal processes of making decisions, right? And that's something we really leverage. Like, we run a lean team. It seems still massive to me because we've grown so quickly, but we really push each department or area to its max. And we look for real weapons and awesome people to join the team who can 10 times their output with AI, right? That's how we think of it. Instead of hiring 10 people of varying skill sets and experience and expertise, like, let's find the best and the best person that fits with us, because company fit is so important. And let's give them AI so they can produce the same amount as those 10 people, but we're getting just the best person creating that much. And we're seeing great success with that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it. Giving us some insights on what's going on in the metaverse world. So thank you, and hope to have you on again soon. Thanks, Riley.
Oh, next time I'll come up in person, Charlie, and we can have a beer and talk some shop. But yeah, it's been a pleasure being on the first podcast experience. So thank you for taking it easy on me, and yeah, looking forward to the next one.
Sweet. Cheers.